What was the first thing you worked for to save up enough money to buy? 13-inch color TV with a built-in VCR. Had to get in a lot of babysitting hours for that bad boy. An original Game Boy. I cut lawns for a summer to save up for it. A TV for my bedroom. I wanted one when I was 13, and my parents said that was fine as long as I paid for it myself, so I got a job picking strawberries at a local farm. Yes, I got my TV, but I was so sick of the sight and smell of strawberries that it was at least a year before I could even think about eating them again. A trumpet. Professional brand silver trumpet. I wish I still had it, but it was stolen. Renting my first apartment rather than sharing. My very first car. It was in 1998, I was 19 years old when I bought it. A 1987 Chevy Camaro. It needed some work, it looked like shit, but I loved that car. My friends liked it as well. My sister's friends all told me it was garbage, but their parents bought them newer cars that they didn't appreciate. A 1979 Gibson Les Paul custom guitar. I paid $400 for it in 1987 and sold it for $500 a few years later after I bought a Fender which was more my style. Wish I never sold it. It would be worth over $3,500 today, easy. A mountain bike in high school. It was a Gary Fisher full suspension bike, back when full suspensions were fairly new. It was kinda a big deal for me. A hamster. Not just the hamster as those costed like $7, but the cage, the plastic hamster ball thing, the bedding, the treats, the works. I named him Sam. He lived to be almost 5 years old and he was the best. My mom helped me figure out how much money food costs and I made sure I had enough money saved at the time of buying him, to be able to get him food for at least a whole year. My mom didn't think he'd stay alive longer than that. Worked 2 jobs and sold plasma while in college a few years ago to take my then girlfriend and myself to Europe. Neither of us had ever really traveled before, and she was always worried she'd get stuck and never get a chance to see the world. Thought bringing her along was a huge waste of money for the longest time after we broke up, but she died recently and I found out she kept a box of mementos from our trip. In hindsight I think that was probably the best money I ever spent. The whole Beatles rock band set. With the drums, mic, and guitar. Only had that job for 3 weeks but got enough to buy it and was beyond happy. Clothing that didn't come from Kmart. Food. Lol. I got my first job at 14, as a dishwasher in a bakery. It was about half a mile from the house, and a really nice walk, as we lived in a large city, so there were sidewalks and crosswalks. It was my first job, and the first job I ever really hated. I loved it, too. Cried when I got fired. But I hated the work itself. My hands ached by the end of the day, and my feet would throb. I have very high arches, and didn't have any idea at the time. I loved doing it, though. I loved that I was helping my family, and I loved my co-workers. I eventually got fired because the higher-up boss found out my manager had hired me under the table, something I didn't even know at the time. I used the money mainly to buy groceries and help with the bills. My mom was a single parent, who worked 2 full-time jobs, and raised her own 2 sons, as well as a boy from our neighborhood who had been effectively abandoned by his mother, and my mom raised him for 8 years or so. She also helped take care of our roommate's 2 toddlers, because the roommate, also a single mom, was only working for minimum wage. In addition to all of that, there was a constant line of kids coming in and out of our home, from where one of the kids in our neighborhood needed a place to stay because of an abusive parent, or their parents just didn't care enough about where they were. She would work herself half to death taking care of anyone and everyone she could. She cooked meals for at least 3 different families, for free, because she couldn't stand the idea of someone going hungry, especially a kid. She would get up at 4 a.m. to be to work by 6, her commute was about 1.5 hours, and then when she got home, she'd start her next job on the phones. When all that was over, she'd help kids with their homework while cooking dinner. My mom is superwoman, and I cried when I lost that job, because it meant making her take up the slack yet again. Eventually, I got another job, and we moved somewhere cheaper. Working to help my mom was one of the most fulfilling things I ever did, and watching her struggle and work herself so hard, while knowing how much better she deserved, forged my politics at a young age, as well. Call your mom, folks. They're amazing. Edit thank you Edit 2 I'm literally crying over here. Y'all are amazing and wonderful and beautiful and kind. The amount of people who have messaged me with such kind things to say is incredible. My mom says thank you to everyone. I love you all, profound heart. Edit 3 We're okay financially right now. Promises. We're not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but we can pay our bills and buy food. The biggest hurdle right now is trying to find a used trailer to move onto some land, and get dental work done for my mom. I promise we'll be alright. You're all such incredible people. Clothes. I grew up poor, often going to school with jeans that I grew out of a year ago. They would be tight and would get like high waters while everyone else had well-fitting or baggy jeans. I stood out and I got teased and bullied because of it. When I got to high school I got a part-time job and started buying some decent clothes. Jeans that fit, decent shoes, that sort of thing. My first major purchase that actually required saving was a nice leather jacket. Was about $400 roughly 30 years ago, which was several weeks' pay. A transistor radio. 1972. A year in Japan, saved up $800 for the deposit at the age of 15. Then the program sent a letter asking for the next $3,000 within a month. I was devastated. Couldn't manage it, family wouldn't pay, and I lost my deposit. My Japanese tutor, who I paid, found me a program with a scholarship, which brought the price down to $2,600 altogether. My parents eventually agreed to that one. When I was mid-teens, I was busting tables at a steak-type restaurant, getting paid under the table. I saved up for a boombox with detachable speakers, cassette player and a 5-inch black and white TV built in. That sucker took 8D batteries and was heavy as $. And this was mid-80s, so I don't remember the price. My brother and I discovered that we could record the audio from the TV onto cassettes. We used to record and rearrange lines from movies to make different conversations. Lol. Very time consuming, but money well spent. A lizard when I was a kid. He was already sick and the pet shop lied. He died 3 months later and spent my remaining money on vet bills. Driver's ed. My father refused to pay for it, wouldn't allow me to take it till I had saved enough money to pay for it myself. College. Despite having scholarships and financial aid, I needed to support myself. I got my first official job at 15 to help pay for college and move out. My parents refused to support me financially and I desperately wanted to move away as soon as I graduated from high school. I was 18, living with a friend, and I saved 2 paychecks to buy a mattress and box springs. I took my friend who was a student and my friend who was in the military so could get 2 discounts. Paid $179. And slept on that thing for 6 years. I worked my ass off for all of the summer of 1975. At the end, I bought a programmable calculator. A TSR-52. It allowed you to save your programs on magnetic strips. It was the first programming I ever did. My demonstrating my work to a teacher at school got me access to a computer the school had. I never went to college for programming. Instead, I landed a job in what would have been the middle of my junior year of college. In April, I will be a professional programmer for 40 years. An Alienware laptop computer. Absolute shit. No customer service. $3,000 laptop lasted about 6 months in total before it completely died. This was about 15 years ago, but I will never trust them or buy from them again. My entire paycheck from a summer camp job went to this. The only reason I took this job was so that I could afford it. Guitar. I was 14 and saved up for over a year to buy a Les Paul Standard, £2,000-ish. When I was a kid, I saved up all my birthday money and Christmas money, never got an allowance, to buy myself the original NES, Nintendo Entertainment System. Yes, I'm fucking old, born in '76. But no one in my family thought I could do it because I'd have to save for a few years and not spend it on anything else. My mom refused to buy me a video gaming system because she didn't want me to spend all day playing video games and said if I wanted one I'd have to buy it with my own money. I think she thought she found a loophole in telling me I had to buy it for myself. But I did it. She kept her word though. I bought it and did play that thing forever and all day. Edit, don't know if that counts as worked for since I was gifted money over the years, but yeah. It felt like work as a kid to not spend what money I was getting. The first thing I actually worked for to get money for was a car 1989 Toyota Corolla, used. Glasses. I was 14. A gaming PC, I was 16 and about to start college, worked all summer, spent a fortune on it back then, 15 years ago, had a 780 GT graphics card, can't remember the rest of the specs. Edit, I'm in the UK, we start college/6 format 16. My dog. I've shared this before, but when I was about 10 years old my parents and I were in our backyard clearing out a ton of weeds that had gotten out of hand. I had trouble focusing because our next door neighbor had this really adorable puppy and all I wanted to do was play with him. We found out that they were actually going to take him to an animal shelter because their son was not taking care of him like he promised. I decided to ask my parents if maybe we could get him instead. I was an only child and never really have anyone to play with unless a friend would come over, and the thought of having a puppy to play with whenever I wanted to was great. My parents agreed and our neighbors offered to sell him to us for $20, which is really cheap for a dog when you think about it, but a lot of money for a kid. I had that saved up and immediately agreed and promised I care for him and love him forever. So, he became my puppy and like a brother. After a few days of debating I named him Snoopy. Snoopy became my closest friend. He made me laugh, played with me, and would just hang out and watch TV with me. He was always there for me, especially through some tough times in my life where I was extremely self-destructive. He saved me from myself. He was there at my side through tough breakups where all I ever wanted to do was lay in bed. He was an amazing friend. He was there to see me graduate 8th grade, high school, and college. I hoped he would be there on the day I got married and maybe be around for when I had kids, but unfortunately, as much as we wish for things, sometimes they don't happen. This is the first picture I have of us together and this is the last. Next week will mark 6 years since he passed away, after being by my side for almost 17 years. That little ball of fur in the first picture made such a huge impact on my life, bringing me years of happiness, friendship, and love. My second car. My mom gave me her old '89 Toyota Tercel in which the transmission broke after 6 months of driving. I then worked all summer and saved up enough money to get a '96 Chevy Corsica. That shit was straight out of your grandma's garage. I miss that car. This huge animal encyclopedia. My mother was very poor but she still let me earn a bit of money by doing extra chores around the house. There was this big animal encyclopedia at a local bookstore. It was $150, way too much for even a present, so I saved up all my chore money for a very long time. I believe around a year. I still came up short. I would still buy candy here and there. In the end my mom paid the rest of it. I spent days reading that thing. I kept it for years. In the end I gave it to my younger brother. I don't know where it's at now. My first car. I've been working since I was 17, minimum wage, and I just bought mine at 19 years old. It cost me $5,000, and I was able to pay for it all at once. I was super happy and proud of myself. It's a 2012 Ford Focus Cell hatchback, and I love it a lot. Smile. A Gibson Les Paul guitar. I still have and love it many years later. My piano. I got my first job at a hardware store at the age of 16. With my first paycheck, I bought cat food, a litter box, cat toys, litter, and a bed. Then I adopted my first kitten, Simon. He's a grumpy boy, but I love him anyway, heart. This will probably get buried, but I mowed lawns to buy fabric so my mom could recreate Elizabeth Swan's golden creme gown from the first Pirates of the Caribbean film, the scene where she falls off the wall into the water. I still have it. Edit to add cool costume tags, Elizabeth Swan dress. My Nintendo Ds. A PS2 My first purchase ever with money I made from a job was Independence Day on VHS. A leather biker jacket, it's still my baby 10 years later and I would save it in a fire. My education. I worked crazy hours, 60+ hours /WK, 6 days a week, every summer while I was in college to cover housing and food while I studied. It was effort well spent. Smile.